Listen up, fellow Democrats. Fight fake news and lies with facts. Save our democracy from right-wing hypocrisy. Keep our integrity, embrace our diversity. Whenever we're down, we always come back. So listen up, Democrats.
Hello, welcome to Progressive Oregon, a weekly engagement broadcast on progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor, and I'm here with my co-host, Betsy Cunningham. If you would like to ask questions during the show, please go to the YouTube channel, find the show, and you'll be able to type in questions. Betsy will be able to read them to me, and we will do our best to answer them. On our agenda today, we have a brief weekly update, and then the main part of our show today is a countdown to the Oregon primary for 2018, and talking about some issues that this primary is highlighting. And then we'll talk about some upcoming events. We have a June 2nd event for people who want to restore integrity to the Democratic Party of Oregon. We'll talk about that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the organization advancement of democracy. So we will be doing election night coverage starting around 8 o'clock on Tuesday. 8 o'clock is when the polls close, and they've been counting ballots all day, and so not too long after 8 o'clock, they'll be releasing the first returns. As we will see today, there's not that many races that are contested, so there's not a lot of races to focus on. It's just trying to get the data in, especially from like the second CD, because there's around 19 counties in the second congressional district, and all of those counties have to report their numbers so we can get a readout on what's happening with the second congressional district campaign. So that starts at 8 o'clock. Go to live.uphillmedia.org for the show. And we'll either be broadcasting from here, or if we can make the technology work appropriately, we'll be down at the Fort George Brew Pub here in Astoria, which is the brew pub that started the not the drinking revolution, the reinvention of drinking in Astoria. So it should be a fun evening.
Were you a part of that revolution, Larry?
Unfortunately, no. I'm a really boring teetotaler. But I'm happy for all their financial success. Fort George is like the second biggest employer in Clatsop County now. Beer sells. So see you on election night back here, 8 o'clock. So today's show is Countdown to the 2018 Oregon primary. I'll talk about some high-level characteristics of this election, which is really interesting, and then go into some of the races that are of interest in this election. The overarching theme that I think you will find is money in politics, and what we really need to figure out is how to get money out of politics, because it is truly corrupting our system, and it's as bad now as it's ever been. It's always been bad. Sometimes we think the old days were better, but they weren't. But we really have to get the money out of politics, because there's more money now than ever. So going to our first slide, who is voting? This was data extracted yesterday from what is reported to the Secretary of State from all the counties across the state. And what this shows is a breakdown by age range of who's voting in this election. Last week, I calculated what the average age of the voter was here in House District 32, which is one of the ones where there's an actual contest going on. The average age is 66 years old. What that means by average is that half the voters who voted are older than 66 years old. And what this graph shows is that there is virtually no one under 25 that's voting. There's a few people in the 25 to 34 range. We get a few more in the 35 to 49 year range. And then suddenly in the 50 to 64 range, it looks like people are starting to cast their votes. And it's really the boomers that are going to be the deciders on who wins this election.
That's right.
And if you, it is. So youth, your vote counts. Your vote doesn't count if you don't vote. The breakout here is the blue is the Democrats, the orangey red color is the Republicans, and the gray is the non-affiliated voters. And the yellow color is the independent party. So if you remember, the non-affiliated voters is the second largest group of people in the state. There's almost as many non-affiliated voters as there are Democrats. So in terms of voting, that gray bar should be up with the blue bar if they were comparable. The reason why they tend not to vote, even if they were inclined to vote, is that we have closed primaries, except for the independent party. And so for many of the positions on the ballot, they don't get to vote. So they don't get to vote on the Democratic Party. They don't get to vote in the Republican primary. So all that leaves on their ballot are any local ballot measures that might be on there, or the one statewide nonpartisan race, which is the labor commissioner. And that one's really hard to get excited about. The Republicans, for their numbers, are hanging in there. But, the independent party, which became a major party due to their numbers, I believe 2 years ago, is close to disappearing once again, because the number of registered voters has gone up substantially, but the independent party registration numbers have not gone up. So they will probably fall below that threshold and become a minor party, and so they will disappear off the ballot again. But as you can see, they don't even vote anyway. The thing about the independent party is people think that they're really being a non-affiliated voter by being an independent party, but it really is a party with a ever-changing and evolving set of beliefs. They apparently their platform convention is they get together and they vote on whatever people nominate, and it's all over the political spectrum. So when it could be a smattering of things from both the left and the right wings of the electorate. Any observations, Betsy or John, on who's voting?
Well, so...
Or should we just have a moment of silence?
Yeah, for the fact that people aren't voting. I'm going to say it goes back to reach again. I'm just going to keep pounding on that. But so we keep hearing about this non-affiliated voter and how important they're going to be to us as progressives, but are they if they don't vote or give a shit?
No.
Okay. Well, that's discouraging. Yay.
And they like to, I don't know how many actually show up at things like the Indivisible movement or, the previous movements that we had, but I'm not seeing a lot come out of it.
Well, I guess the only observation I would say is Gail McLaughlin has built quite a coalition and force, and she's an NPP, right? And so I'm hoping that her encouragement there and coalescing around her effort is going to bring in more non-affiliated. But that'd be California.
Indeed. So on the next slide is one of the reasons why there's not a lot of excitement in this election. There's lots of positions that are not up for election because they're 4-year terms or 6-year terms. So the Secretary of State is not up. That was the position won by Republican Dennis Richardson because the Democrats preferred him over another Democrat, apparently. So yes, we have a Republican who is now going to be involved in redistricting, something they've been hauled into court for multiple times across the country. Great. Tobias Reed was elected in 2016. He's our treasurer, so we won't see him until 2020. The Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, was also elected 2 years ago, so we'll see her in 2020 again, running for re-election. The senators are staggered. They have 6-year terms, and this is the part of the 6-year cycle where neither Jeff Merkley nor Ron Wyden are running for election. Usually they tend to bring in a lot of money into the election cycle when they run, and they fund the statewide coordinated campaign with all their money. But there's none this time, so it's probably going to be an understated statewide campaign at the end of this year. And half the state senators are not on the ballot because the state senators have 4-year terms and they're staggered 15 and 15 every 2 years. So it means that there's a lot of people that we're not voting for. What's new in this election is the diversity in Portland. So, Portland has gone from being a pretty racist city, which 50 years ago segregated people and into where they could live inside the city, to now being Portlandia. And the rarest thing on the ballot in Portland this year is the white male. So we have Nick Fish running for re-election on the Portland City Council, but his opponents are just all over the diversity map. We have Julia DeGraw, who's a proclaimed socialist. We have Joanne Hardesty, who is arriving with a fierce determination to clear things up and has spent time in the Oregon legislature. We look forward to her getting elected on Tuesday night. We have Philip Wolf, who's a deaf candidate. It was fascinating seeing the changes that were brought to the debates by his presence and him bringing along sign language interpreters and other deaf people who for the first time could listen to and understand what the debate was about. That was really cool. We have Andrea Valderrama, who's running, a young Latina. We have Loretta Smith, who's ending her term on the Multnomah County Commission and is now running for the city council position. Stuart Emmons, the other white male that's running a campaign of any significance. His deal is housing, but both he and Nick really pale in comparison to the other candidates, just in their ability to excite the electorate, to talk about interesting ideas, and to drum up the base. And then the final one is Felicia Williams. So lots of women, lots of minority women running. It's going to be a very different Portland City Council this year. Any comments on that on the line, Betsy?
Thanks.
Apparently not.
Well, no.
No.
Betsy was involved with chat, right?
So going through the other slides, some of this is probably going to be newsworthy because it doesn't get covered in the media. They just focus on the races that haul in the most money. So there's actually a lot of people that are running for the Oregon governor spot on the Republican ticket. There's only 3, not surprisingly, the 3 with the most money that are getting any kind of coverage. The one that's expected to win is Newt Buehler, but because of the way the primaries work, you only get the extreme right of the Republican Party voting in primaries. And so even though he's got a vast amount of money, there's no guarantee that he's going to be the one that's going to win. He was part of founding the Ross Perot Party at one point in time. He hails from Bend. He's got a huge contribution from Phil Knight. But this might be a case where money does not swamp it. There's a bunch of candidates. There's 3 candidates that have not raised any money. There's one candidate that looks like he gave himself $100 to open up a checking account and has done nothing else. And then there's a couple that have raised, in the 5-digit figure, but it doesn't make them competitive. It does take a certain amount of money to run a campaign and get any kind of voter familiarity if you're coming from being completely anonymous. So it just doesn't work well. I want to thank all of these people for running for office, but if you're going to run for office, you need to put some effort into it.
And just out of curiosity, what's the likelihood of any of these? I mean, the Republican candidate doesn't have a chance in hell in Oregon, right? I mean, they're just not even close these days.
Why would you say that?
For governor, right? I mean, aren't we like a massively just the governor's seat is safe? I've seen a lot of Sam Carpenter ads. It really frightens me. He's very gun happy. That's why.
Well, let's go to the Democratic ticket and talk about that a little bit more. So on the Democratic, there's a much shorter list of people running against the governor. Kate Brown is the incumbent. She's got $1.5 million that she's raised so far, and that's just for the primary. She has 2 opponents. I was a little shocked to see Candace Neville at 0. It takes more than Facebook to run a political campaign, and I was hoping that she would at least be a opposition voice of some significance, because she is anti-LNG and she's taking positions that Kate Brown fails to take. But with $0, it means that she has no ability to get her name out there. And at some level, money does bring credibility to you, certainly in the eyes of the media. So Kate Brown, clearly the front runner in the Democratic Party, but everyone always finishes their sentence, yeah, Kate Brown's running for governor, but I've been so disappointed with her. And so I think we'll find that Kate Brown is actually very nervous about this year, just because the mode of operation of the Democratic Party is to poison all of the potential candidates that run against you, so you have no choice when it comes to the ballot. And so here we are with Kate Brown running for governor, no viable opponent running against her. There's no Brad Avakian running against her. The treasurer, he's just new in his job. He's not running against her. There's no one with statewide recognition who is stepping up to run against her and create any kind of excitement in the primary. And we have really one choice, and that's kind of beating your candidacy across the finish line with a 2x4. And I don't, at some point, it's going to stop working for the Democratic Party. People don't feeling like they're being held hostage when they go to the ballot box.
Just on that and on Candace Neville. I mean, you said, you mentioned a bunch of things. Facebook isn't the way to run a campaign. You need money for credibility. Whose fault is that? Because I would say that nationally we have a problem with progressives not doing what they need to do to support candidates that are progressive. And so it's like we're seeing this all across the board. It's like there's a good progressive candidate and they got zilch for support.
Yeah.
It's a failing of, I mean, I saw Candace's effort. We heard her talk. She's, intelligent person, sounded like a great person for the job, needed a website, needed all sorts of things. And we just don't have the structure in the progressive movement to put these things together for our candidates. Whereas, well, Kate Brown, she has one anyway because she's the gov. And, but let's just take another person in the race that you're going to be talking to. Jamie McLeod. What's her name? Jamie McLeod. She's the McLeod Skinner. She's the other CD2 candidate. Bill Gabriel. You were interested in CD2? That's Bill Gabriel's on watching, Larry. So I mean, she immediately got tons of cash. She's already the golden ticket of the Democratic Party proper, and they know that there's a whole bunch of other people running as Democrats. This is the big problem all of our people face, right? It's just already immediately disadvantaged. What do we do about it, Larry? How do we fix that?
Yes, the $1 million question.
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure out how to work together. I don't know. The system, I think, one of the things that is going on is that all the people that Bernie pulled in were very enthusiastic and very dedicated to the ideas that he proposed, but seem not to have been able to connect the dots between what they want and what it's going to take to achieve that. And it's a tough slog. Politics is it's hard to change things, and it takes dedication and work over years. And many people want instantaneous results, which isn't going to happen. I mean, the changes that have been made in the Democratic Party of Oregon have been substantial over the past couple of years. Huge.
Really? All right.
And just because we didn't get the grand prize, a lot of it didn't get recognized. But we're talking about things that had never been talked about before, like why are incumbents the only people allowed full access to the database? Why are challengers to incumbents being denied access to the tools? Those are the kinds of conversations that are now happening within the party, and people are saying, what the hell? What is this about? Why are we doing this? And these are conversations that you couldn't have had 4 years ago. So it's kind of like the Japanese process of ringi, where you start a conversation by talking about the weather, and then you work around to what you really want to talk about.
Isn't that just being passive aggressive?
I'd have to think about that one.
Well, it's Japanese. Okay, that makes sense. So we're just starting. I'll go back to how long did it take the Tea Party to really get a foothold into the Republican Party, right? And how many?
Wasn't that like 4 months?
Really? They had a little more help, though. They had some they had some big monetary backers, actually. That's what we need. We're the big progressive monetary backers. Damn it. All right, I'm shutting up now. Move on.
And then we have the independent candidates. Yes, we have a third major party in Oregon, but the top money collector is Patrick Starnes, who's now collected $4,275. So they're not. The independent party is not changing the conversation. The one. Going on to the next slide for labor commissioner, this is the one race that might make national news. There are 3 candidates, and this is, as we said earlier, the race where there's only one Democrat running, who's Val Hoyle. And you can see that the party is very, very nervous about this, because people are coming out to support her campaign that you wouldn't see if she was the clear leader. There's some extremely critical ads running against Val Hoyle from the Portland news TV channels, and because this is a nonpartisan race, so all of the non-affiliated voters can vote on this one. It's possible that there are enough disaffected Democrats, non-affiliated voters, and Republicans could vote for her opponent, and we lose the labor commissioner seat, which would be really unfortunate, because this is the seat where Brad Avakian has done enormous amount of work in fighting discrimination in the workplace and things which the left wing of the electorate care about, and is really opposed by the right wing. So the Republicans might win their second statewide seat in this election, and it'll be over in 3 days.
Who's the labor commissioner now? Is this Brad Avakian's job that he's quitting?
Yes.
And wasn't he basically just treated like crap? And I mean, I don't know the full story, but
yeah, he it's the old character assassination thing. His primary was so nasty that when he ran against Richardson, he was damaged goods, and then we had a bunch of Democrats supporting Richardson for his election, including in the voters' pamphlet statement endorsements by State Senator Betsy Johnson and House Representative Brad Witt. At the very least, there's some limit to what you should do in terms of working together to get your people elected. I mean, like I said, this is the party that has been drug into court across the country multiple times for egregious gerrymandering and voter suppression. That's the party who's running our Secretary of State.
It's both. Which ones? I'm sorry, they both do that. Which ones? In Oregon's case, it's the Dems or the GOP. I'm sorry.
the GOP's been drug into court. I don't think the Democratic Party's been drug into court for
Not for that.
gerrymandering. Yeah.
Not for that. Okay. For other things, for rigging their own primary, but not for gerrymandering at this point, right?
Yes. Not overt gerrymandering.
Is Lou Ogden the Republican or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming. I didn't look up his
Okay.
affiliation, and apparently he's got all kinds of baggage. He's tied to Alex and stuff. It'd be unfortunate if he were elected. He's not considered a moderate like Newt Bueller is.
I'm sorry, Pat Hacker, chat not shat. I have no idea what you're talking about there, but that sounds really funny. All right, go on, Larry.
So the next set of slides are about the legislative races, and we've talked about this multiple times in the past. So in the House, there are 60 seats up for grabs, and in the Senate are 15. And so just a high-level categorization, there's one primary candidate to vote for, which means the same as you don't have a choice, in 47 of the House seats and 9 of the Senate seats. So even though you get a ballot, you get to vote for Putin, or you get to vote for Ho Chi Minh, right? You don't get a choice. There are 10 races where you have a choice in the primary in the House and 5 in the Senate. The number of races where you have a full contingent, and by full contingent I mean the Republicans have a choice and the Democrats have a choice in the primary, and that all the electorate will have a choice between the winners of the primary from the two parties in the general. You have 2 races where that circumstance exists in the House and 1 where it exists in the Senate. So, you can't bitch about people not voting if there's nothing to vote on. And after looking at the way the candidates have raised money, there's really only 1 Senate race where you have an actual choice in the Democratic primary and the Republican primary, and they're actually running races to win in the general. So 1 out of 75 races. Not good news. So the other conversation, in addition to how do we get money out of politics, is how do we get interest in how do we get the progressive organizations, of which there's now dozens of them across the state, fielding candidates so that we don't have to take the default default candidate that's running for office. That was my biggest disappointment in this election. With all of the activism going on, I can point to few candidates that actually arose out of those movements. They've been activists and they've been progressives, but it was a decision on their own to run. They were not recruited by any of the existing organizations, and there's nothing that is preventing anyone from recruiting candidates. And it does no good to endorse candidates, because all you're doing is taking what is being fed to you and picking the best, if they fulfill whatever criteria you have. So we have to move the process along for 2020 so that we are now beginning, because the 2018 election is, for all intents and purposes, over, and we need to start now working on 2020, searching for those candidates to run, make sure they are being appointed to boards and running for the lower level offices, so they show up on the doorstep of the 2020 campaign with some kind of resume and some kind of credibility that people could believe in.
Well, that's easy to do now, because we can take every candidate that didn't win, that was halfway decent as a progressive in 2018, and begin crafting them for 2020. But I think when you say, I was discouraged too that we didn't have more candidates that were put forth to run. I think the problem is, if you're an organization who's still trying to figure out, like many of our progressive organizations are still trying to figure out even how to run themselves, or find the resources to run themselves, or figure out how to be, how to be a 501c3 or whatnot, and when you're doing that, trying to find a candidate and then say, hey, we'd like you to run for office, and we have no idea what to do to support you in that endeavor, but we'd like you to run for office, and we really don't have anything to help you with other than we just are an organization, right? And the only thing we've seen is nationally, the bigger orgs have been able to endorse specific candidates in specific races, but we're talking thousands and thousands of candidates across the country. And so we need, this is round one. I think we need our organizations local to be stronger and have their shit together and bring in money to do what they really need to do for our candidates.
And the third initiative we need to launch is raise the pay in Salem. It's $24,000 a year, which I think now is like well below the poverty level.
There you go.
And so you get a very, very tiny slice of the population with even the ability to run for public office. It's going to be someone whose spouse has a vast enough income to support them, or someone who's retired and doesn't have to work. But your normal citizen with a 40-hour work week job and a mortgage cannot just pack up and go to Salem for 6 months and sit in the legislature. And there's enormous talent in Oregon. We have our little Silicon Forest in Washington County, where there are thousands of people who know how to get things done and know how to organize and know how to work across groups and people and come to an agreement. But all those people are eliminated from even running because there is no way they can pack up their life and put it on hold and go sit in Salem for 6 months.
Well, you can't if you're a bit of an elitist rich person who has a lot of time on your hands and are completely disconnected from what's going on in reality.
Yes, and that's like 3% of the population.
So that's how we got where we are.
That's how we get our 3% running the world. So we have
there's actually a question, Larry, from Alpha Grey Knight. Guys, how do we beat the corporate Dems in your opinions, and what should candidates run on to get your votes?
So we started this in 2016 and we're partially successful. We need to be much more serious about it this time. So going on right now is the election of precinct committee persons. They are the ones that elect the delegates to the State Central Committee of the Democratic Party of Oregon, and it's those people who will be electing the leadership for the next 2 years. And we will not be able to eliminate the corporate Democratic influence unless we change the ethos of the organization, and we can't do that unless we change the leadership. The chair was elected by a shadows group of people who wanted to retain their grip on the Democratic Party and what they call what they regard as the good foot soldiers who do what they are told. It's their job to go out and elect Val Hoyle. It's their job to go out and elect Kate Brown. Unless you change the attitude at the top, you're not going to make the other changes. And the other thing that Democrats are going to have to accept is that all the money that comes in to support the Democratic Party of Oregon, and their budget is around $1 million, is being funded by corporate groups and by organizations who have an agenda to promote. Some of the agendas are good, and it fits within the platform of the Democratic Party. But that addiction to money is what causes the party to do things that make it uncomfortable, like the promotion of LNG terminals on the Oregon coast, in spite of the environmental issues that those things cause. So, it's going to take the next 9 months of voting to get ethical leadership inside the Democratic Party of Oregon. But if we are able to organize and work together, we can do it. Any other questions, Betsy?
I don't see any questions.
So going to the next slide, we have election results to announce even before the election is over. And we can do this because there are no opposition candidates and no viable write-in candidates running. So Dwayne Stark, Paul Hovey, John Lively, Nancy Nathanson, Dan Rayfield, Rob Noble, Jeff Barker, Jennifer Williamson, Andrea Salinas, Karen Power, Rob Noss, Tana Sanchez, Tina Kotek, Elisa Kinney-Geyer, Diego Hernandez, Carla Peluso, Greg Smith, Lynn Finley, James Manning, Betsy Johnson, and Elizabeth Steiner Hayward. Congratulations, you won, and you're going to win in November, and you're going to represent us. So that takes care of about 2/3 of the election.
Do they all get paid a below poverty level salary for doing that?
Yes.
How awesome is that?
Yes, we're saving money. We're saving money. As I mentioned in an earlier broadcast, Julia Parrish spent something like $4.5 million on ballot measure 101, and roughly, if you spent $4.5 million divided amongst the pay of the legislators, you could bring them up to something that's comparable to what a county commissioner makes in the state of Oregon, which is $70,000 to $80,000 a year.
Yeah, that's called know the roles in government that actually pay well. County commissioner. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you have a extremely altruistic county like mine, which doesn't pay their county commissioners because we think they need to be volunteers because money corrupts, and so we have the downside of volunteer commissioners. So there are a couple of races where there's sort of good news. So in House District 11, we have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans running in the primary, and so that means that there's going to be a choice on the ballot. Unfortunately, one of the Republicans, Joshua Powell, has not raised any money, so it's very unlikely that he's going to win. So that's why this is called sort of good news. The Republicans don't get a choice, really. They're gonna vote for Mark Herbert because that's going to be the name that they're familiar with. And then we have the 2 Democrats running against each other, so semi-healthy there. On the next slide, House District 53, which is, we spoke with Bill Trumbull, I believe last week or the week before. Unfortunately, Bill is running a money-free campaign. And so unless something is going on in 53 that gives him name recognition, it's really unlikely that he's going to pull it out. Maybe his opponent is going to, commit some heinous act that's going to give her bad press and cause him to win. But it's really tough doing this on $0. And so this is also sort of good news. The 2 Republicans are both at least raising money to do something with. So $20,000, you can get your name out there with $20,000.
As we talk about what we need to do to remove money from politics, the number one factor is how much money do you have to run for office so that you can win. Bill Trumbull was a phenomenal interview. I thought everything he said was great. He reminded me of my dad, somebody I want in public service, and that's depressing as hell to see that he's got no money.
I know, and I didn't even think to ask him how to talk about the mechanics of his campaign because I made assumptions about what he was doing.
Yeah.
So interesting ones to watch. Senate District 3 in Jackson County, which is a new hotbed of activism. There are four Democrats running for Senate District 3 for the primary. The money they've raised ranges from just about $100,000 to $1,000. It's going to be very interesting how this plays out. Kevin Stein does have name recognition because he's a Medford City Councilor, and so it would be very interesting to see if he can pull this off. Julian Bell is also another interesting one. He ran against Kate Brown 2 years ago. I believe it was 2 years ago. But he's only raised $10,000. And then we have the other 2, which have raised $51,000 and $98,000. So Athena has raised twice as much money as her nearest competitor. And so it'd be interesting to dig into, what is her appeal? Why is money being thrown at her as opposed to the other candidates?
That'll take about 20 seconds on Open Secrets, and we'll find out what big corps are sponsoring her. I just want to say Kevin Stein is really seasoned. If everybody knows. So you said he was a city council person right now,
Yeah.
and he ran for some other seat in 2016. We had him on We the People back then in the first run of the show, and that's what it takes: is people continually running and winning offices, losing, but staying in government so that name recognition is high. So yeah, I agree with you. Even though he's got $1,000, he's got name. I guess that'd be the other factor besides money, huh?
Yeah, if you're Cher or Oprah, you need less money to get name recognition. The next one is just House District 32, which is, interestingly, where I live. It's been an experience being the Iowa of the Oregon primary election because of the amount of attention that is being devoted to this race. The story behind how these three people ended up on the ballot is an epic in itself. And we've talked about it a little bit previously, but the bottom line is there's two candidates that are having tons of outside money coming into this campaign, and we have one candidate who has refused outside money, and lo and behold, he's not only third, but he's only raised 20% of the amount of money that his next highest competitor has raised. So he's running a very grassroots campaign. It'll be interesting to see if it works. He was able to get the endorsement of the Daily Astorian, which, who reads newspapers anymore? It'll be interesting to see if that has any effect.
People in Astoria do. Come on.
Old people in Astoria. So
that was Astoria.
Our 66 plus group are the ones that read the Daily Astorian.
Right.
Unfortunately, they're the ones that vote, and so that's what gives him a ghost of a chance of even being competitive in this. We've heard that there was a survey done when Tim Josie. So Tim Josie, former legislator, is just ending up a long stint as the Tillamook County Commissioner. He's for whoever makes up this stuff, he's been framed as the front runner in the race, but he's ran a poll, and it's shown that he's strong in Tillamook County, which makes sense, Washington County, which kind of makes sense, and not strong at all in Clatsop County, and that's because why would we ever hear of Tim Josie? So there's no automatic name familiarity because when he was a legislator, it was like 20 years ago. Tiffany Mitchell was promoted by the unions and a couple of nonprofit organizations in Portland, and that's where all of her support is coming from. They're sending out buses of people to walk the precincts for her. She's got yard signs all over the place. They're doing lots of social media, and so she's got a very competitive campaign, even though she's arriving with no political experience. And then we have John Orr, who's doing a total grassroots campaign, has name recognition because he's lived here for 25 years, and has done things like he's been president of the North Coast Land Conservancy and stuff. But it's going to be a very interesting race to watch, and certainly the post-mortem on this is going to be interesting. Like what did the campaigns do that worked and what did not work?
So so John Orr is easily the progressive that the Democratic Party is attacking, but which one of the other two are they supporting?
Well, Tiffany has the support of the Portland progressive legislators. So, Alyssa Kinney Geyer held a house party where they raised, $40,000 for her or something like that. She's gotten support from Rob Noss and from Michael Dembrow. How they're connected to Tiffany Mitchell is a complete mystery. It's this sort of background network that seems to go on. So for whatever reason, they put their money on her. She talks the values thing straight down the line. So she's been very well groomed by her full-time campaign manager. So yeah, she goes through the litany of progressive issues and states them very well. So
Okay. So are there two progressives then in this, and one actually has money?
Yeah, there are two progressives. The big difference is one of them is not bought and paid for. Tiffany claims that she's not paid for, but really there is some obligation that you owe when all is said and done.
Oh, so this is a Cory Booker or a Kamala Harris or Beto O'Rourke, those kind of progressives. That's
yes.
Okay. Randy Bryce. They're bought by some, just not wholly and completely. Their souls are still within their bodies. Yeah.
So yeah, Tuesday night we'll get to see how we do on that one. And of course, it's a primary, and so you don't need a majority; you just need a plurality, which is whoever takes the most votes.
Agreed. I just want to take a break for the moment. See what happens when you say that this is going to be an open conversational show. Jilly Love says Pele is going to show her power, and that's true. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but we're going to have a massive steam event, a volcano in Hawaii. And that's going to be pretty awesome. So it does your environmental news. Just let everybody know. All right.
The next slide, Senate District 11. This is going to be a very interesting race to watch. We have the Senate president, the very, very powerful Peter Courtney, scares the shit out of everyone. No one will defy his will. He's sitting on $476,000 to spend on this Oregon Senate race, and he's had his first challenger in 24 years, Joyce Judy. After months of searching for a candidate and everyone being totally gutless and spineless and unwilling to run against an incumbent, Joyce Judy stepped up to run, and we've had Joyce on this show. So she's sitting on $52,000, really getting out there, running a grassroots campaign. It'll be interesting to see if she comes close. You know, with almost $500,000, you can send out lots of glossy mailings to people. It's, you know, how effective that is still open to question. On the previous race, I've received at least 6 8.5 by 11 glossies from Tiffany in the mail, and they're very well done. They're very well produced, and it's the kind of thing you can do with piles of money. But they're not the things that make me decide. I look at, you know, the background and qualifications of candidates, and try to make a choice on who's going to best represent my district. So Peter seems to be running a traditional, you know, just beat him over the head with materials type of campaign. With $500,000, you're probably able to pull that one off. Anyway, a good one to watch. And then our final race that we're going to talk about is Senate District 24, where we have the incumbent Rod Monroe, who's been in there forever, rarely had a challenger, sitting on $320,000. But in a rare move, there are members of the Democratic Party who would like to see him replaced, because he was seen as a block of some of the legislation in the Senate, and is one of the reasons why the Senate is known as the place where bills go to die. We have the establishment choice, which is Shamia Fagan. Shamia was previously in the House. She didn't run for re-election a couple years ago. She's decided to get back in the game, so she's sitting on just under $300,000 that she's running in her campaign with. And then we have the true progressive in the race, which is Casey Jama. He's a longtime activist running a ground game, but you can see the difference in money is staggering. He's basically at $28,000, which is a tenth of what his nearest opponent is running. So it'll be interesting to see if the ground game in this race is effective. Or maybe Casey and Shamia will split the vote and give Rod the opening to re-election.
Well, then we'll just have to beat Rod up in Senate. Just with that. Casey also had on this program, just to remind everybody, Larry's interviewed a lot of these actual progressives, and those interviews are on Uphill Media's YouTube channel for you to share. Thanks.
So that's the and the one thing I didn't cover that should have been in this group was the Congressional District 2, where we have 7 candidates running against running for the Democratic primary. Last time there was only one candidate, and that was Jim Crary, and he ran a inexpensive campaign, but traveled all over the 2/3 of the state that make up the 2nd congressional district, and got his name out here. This time, in reaction to Trump, a lot of more people have jumped into the race, and they feel like they have an opening because the incumbent, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Was a proponent of the Medicare, of the Obamacare disassembly project, and one of the reasons why we have a medical system that is just totally screwed up. I mean, our medical system sucks. We spend the most. We're number 17 in the world of the in terms of quality of delivery. It is a mess, and he's one of the reasons why. So we have 7 candidates. 3 of them seem to be fighting it out for the top slot. We will do our best to pull in the 3, what we think will be the 3 top vote getters on election night for some comments on the election from them. So stay tuned for that.
Really? We're gonna have Jim. And Eric.
We can get Jim. Jim's going to be in a controlled environment. It's when you get into election night parties that things start getting a little bit more riotous.
Yes, absolutely.
And less able to control. Any final comments or questions from the line, Betsy?
I don't see any comments about the elections or questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any ideas on how to get the pay of our legislators raised or getting money out of politics, please bring them along. We need to get started now.
I know how. So we need everybody to donate all their money to progressive candidates so that they can win their elections and change laws. There you go.
And it doesn't need to be a lot of money, as Bernie Sanders demonstrated. It has to be a lot of small donations.
Do you know what our average donation is, Larry? At UHM? $23. That's pretty
wow.
Cool. Yeah, $23.
I think that we need to raise a lot of people. I think that any focus on money is misguided because, there's a lot more people with ideas if we can activate people. I believe that's going to take progressive stance on issues and not worrying too much about organizational titles and structure. That's my 2 cents for organizing the masses in their own perceived self-interest.
All right. Betsy has spoken.
So go out and do it, John.
I'm on it. Whatever you say.
The you other guys team.
Just tell me what to do.
So next slide. We have an event coming up on June 2nd, and these are for people that are running for re-election as precinct committee persons and for people who are showing up for the first time. If you go through your standard training on what a precinct committee person is, you will learn how to be a good foot soldier. You will learn how to go out and distribute literature for the candidates that have been chosen by the party. What we are doing is we are preaching the gospel of grassroots organizations and telling people what their rights are and what their role is as a representative of the Democratic Party in your precinct. So as a precinct person, you represent X number of people that live in your precinct, and you should be taking their values and their intentions and representing them as an elected official to the Democratic Party. So we will be going through how the structures are elected, how we end up with, once you understand how all the elections work within the party, you can figure out who to vote for. There's two parts to this. There's the understanding, and then there's the organizational part. It's the organizational part that's going to be tougher, because only by working together will we be able to be successful. And so this is the first step in starting to coordinate. What's most interesting about this election is that this will roll into the convention for 2020. So it's not going to be too long before we're going to start talking about the 2020 election. And there's going to be, there's no front runner at this point in time for the Democratic Party. And there's no third party that has emerged to field a candidate. So if you want to work together to go to the convention and be more successful even than we were last time at changing things, this is your opportunity to join in with your fellow progressives and get something done. So it will be about an hour and a half discussion on what you need to know to become an effective PCP and affect change. You can attend physically at 3520 Southeast Yamhill Street in Portland, Oregon, or you can watch from the comfort of your home on the internet. So if you go to live.flmedia.com on June 2nd at 3 o'clock, you'll be able to watch the proceedings as they are live streamed from the Sunnyside Community Church. So very exciting stuff. The other thing that's going on is this is being sponsored by a group called Advancement of Democracy Oregon, and it is all about restoring democracy to the Democratic Party. So if you would like to start on that journey, John, go to the How Get Involved slide. All you need to do is go to the website, advancementofdemocracy.org, and join. The programs that you can participate in are listed, and it's everything from learning on how democratic procedures work to starting the candidate search for 2020. So what we're going to be doing is setting up a strategic plan of what races that we want to find candidates for, and then we will systematically go search for candidates to fill those slots and then make them viable candidates when they run. And as we said earlier, the 2020 election starts now. The 2018 election is, for all intents, over with. We need to start planning for 2020. So if you'd like to join in that effort, go to advancementofdemocracy.org, join, and let us know how you would like to participate, and we will get you involved. Upcoming events. So we are almost at Election Day, which is Tuesday, May 15th. The election is over in terms of submitting ballots at 8 o'clock. It is too late to mail in your ballot. So you will need to find a ballot drop box and drop your ballot off before the 8 o'clock on the 15th. And then, of course, we have the general election in November 6th. But as we just saw in this presentation, not much action because everything is decided.
Alpha Gray Knight has another question. Should we collectively boycott any company that donates to a campaign? I say yes, but
I say yes, and do it in a vocal way. So use the @ sign when you go into Facebook to announce your boycott. There are corporations that watch out for that stuff and actually will try to reach out to you and calm you down, so you will stop causing them to lose revenue. There's some organizations in Portland I think we should boycott because of their participation, their inappropriate participation in districts that they do not belong in. Boycott them and make a lot of noise. Anything else, Betsy?
Nope.
Good show, Larry.
So these shows are not free. Please donate to Uphill Media so we can continue doing these. We We want to get our facility by the end of June. We need to drive up our revenue in order to do that. So donate.uphillmedia.org. We would love to have your $27 or whatever is appropriate to you.
End of June. That's optimistic, my friend. Wow, that's rocking.
It could happen.
I changed the letter I sent out to end of the year because I was like, yeah, it's going to take a lot of money, everybody, to get out of here, the garage. And as I said in the letter, if you didn't see it, go back and look at a broadcast we did in August from my garage, and you'll see why we have to get out of here soon. It doesn't go well. Anyway, thank you, Larry and Betsy, for all you do. The volunteers make this happen.
Thank you, John. And what is our music today, Betsy?
Rich Man's House by Marjorie Wiltz from Atlanta, Georgia, and it's part of the Art and Music of the Poor People's Campaign, which is actually kicking off their 40 days of action this week throughout the country. They're having a rally up in Salem.
Awesome. Thank you, audience. Ready to go out? Let's get out of here.
Bye, everyone.
Well, I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity, took back my humanity. Now he's under my feet, under my feet. Under my feet, yeah, he's under my feet. Ain't no system gonna walk all over me, Governor. Well, I went down to the governor's house and I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity, took back my humanity, and now he's under my feet. Under my feet, yeah, he's under my feet. Ain't no system gonna walk all over me. People's house, right? Well, I went down to the people's house and I took back what is. Oh, I took back my dignity. I took back. Now he's under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, yeah, he's under my feet. Ain't no system gonna walk all over me. Ain't no system gonna walk all over me.